is a budget brief from the National Women's Law Center and National Priorities Project. I'm Mattia Kramer. In our last budget brief, we explained why budget issues are really women's issues and how cutting government spending can really mean eliminating services for women and families. Some politicians and pundits are trying to convince us that we have to make those cuts in order to reduce budget deficits and protect our children's future. But we don't protect our children's future by cutting Head Start, K-12 education, Pell Grants, and leaving more children to grow up in poverty. And we don't have to. There's an alternative approach to deficit reduction that Americans overwhelmingly support. We can close loopholes in the tax code that benefit the very wealthy. Polls show that a strong majority of Americans want the wealthy and corporations to pay their fair share in taxes. They also want a balanced approach to deficit reduction that includes new tax revenue. But so far, Washington's approach to deficit reduction hasn't been balanced. In the past few years, lawmakers passed $2.5 trillion in deficit reduction, 2/3 of which has come from cutting programs, which eliminate services, especially for women. Instead of considering more cuts to programs for women and families, Congress can eliminate loopholes in the tax code that allow the wealthy and corporations to avoid paying their fair share. Right now, some multimillionaire investors pay a lower tax rate than middle-class families, and some multinational corporations with billions of dollars in profits pay no federal income tax at all. Congress can ask the wealthy and corporations to pay a tax rate that's at least as high as what middle-class families pay. Here are some examples. Limiting tax breaks for the richest 2% would raise about $51 billion a year. That's more than the federal government spends annually to help support poor families with housing and energy assistance and the WIC nutrition program for pregnant and postpartum women, infants, and young children. Ending tax breaks for corporations that shift jobs and profits offshore would raise about $60 billion a year. That would more than cover what the federal government spends in a year on Head Start, child care assistance, school meals, and education for disadvantaged children. Closing the loophole that allows hedge fund managers to pay lower tax rates on some income would raise up to $2 billion a year, more than twice the amount the federal government spends annually to provide health services for women veterans and expectant mothers and children through the Maternal and Child Health Block Grant. There will be a series of challenging budget fights this year, that's for sure. But the bottom line is pretty simple. Most Americans don't want women and families to bear the brunt of deficit reduction. A fair plan to reduce deficits would raise new tax revenue from the wealthy and corporations that would trim deficits while protecting vital programs. It's what's best for women, and it's the plan Americans overwhelmingly support.